It was a crisp autumn evening when the cracks of my world began to show. My wife Claire claimed she was out with her friends, leaving me at home with a bottle of wine and an old movie, the kind we used to watch together before our laughter began to sound different. 7 years of marriage, long enough to memorize the tiny changes in her habits, to know the difference between her real smile and the one she forced when something was wrong. That night, something was different. She called me around 10, her voice too bright, laughter too forced behind the static. I wanted to believe her, wanted to drown out the clamor of suspicion gnawing at my insides, but it felt as if everything in our cozy little home had grown unfamiliar. When she finally walked through the door just past midnight, she giggled like a teenager sneaking in after curfew, cheeks flushed, hair slightly disheveled and reeking of someone else's cologne. My stomach twisted. Still, I plastered on a smile, pretending I was none the wiser. Claire flopped onto the couch, kicking off her heels, her eyes glinting until they darted toward her phone, gripping it as if it might slip away and reveal all her secrets. She looked up with a carefree grin, the same one that won me over all those years ago when she swore we'd never keep secrets. "You're in a good mood," I said, setting down my glass, searching her face for the girl I once knew. "Yeah, it was a great night," she replied, her voice too high, almost giddy. "The girls and I, nothing crazy, just drinks and a lot of laughs." I nodded, heart hammering in my chest. Glad to hear it, I clung to every syllable, watching her closely. That was my first mistake, hoping that just by wanting something enough, I could will it into being true. As the night wore on, Claire avoided my gaze and clutched her phone like a lifeline. Every time it buzzed, she jumped, sending a flicker of guilt across her face before it vanished beneath practiced indifference. The urge to confront her blazed white-hot, but confronting Claire had never been my way. I'd always taken the quiet route, waiting, observing, piecing things together behind polite silence. Trust was the foundation of our marriage, or so I'd always believed. The next morning, sunlight streamed through our bedroom window, illuminating the line of her shoulders as she hummed to herself, whirling around the kitchen in a way that felt rehearsed. Her phone buzzed again and again, but she made no move to answer. When she stepped out to grab the mail, my hands trembled with temptation. We knew each other's passcodes. One of those mundane tokens of trust that suddenly felt like the cruelest joke. I picked up her phone, heart pounding. The messages were still on the lock screen. "Last night was amazing," one read. "I can still feel your touch." Photos followed, Claire laughing, her head tipped back in a dimly lit hotel room, arms around a man I didn't recognize. My worldview shattered in an instant. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. I put the phone back before she returned, forcing calm over the maelstrom inside. My reflection in the screen was a stranger, haunted, hollow-eyed, numb. Rage would come later, for now I needed clarity. I needed to know how deep her lies ran. Claire returned, breezy and oblivious, and kissed me with a smile as bright as ever. I felt it all, her pretense, the rough edge of guilt buried beneath charm. How could she pretend everything was fine when she'd torn my heart out by the roots? Over the next several days, I became a ghost in my own home, watching, listening, following the fragments of her deceit. At first, I hoped her one-night mistake would fade into memory, a blip we could overcome. But it wasn't a one-time thing. What started as a night of harmless fun had grown into a pattern: hidden lunches, secret meetups, message after message that made a mockery of every promise we made before family and God. The weight of her betrayal settled into my bones, heavy and cold. Sometimes I caught her watching me, worry flickering in her eyes, but each time I smiled, each time I played the role. My intention, burning inside like a fever, was simple: to get the truth and make her feel what I felt. But the obstacle, the sick mix of love, rage, and disbelief, kept me frozen on the edge of action. I knew with a bone-deep certainty that if I confronted her too soon, she'd twist the story, paint herself the victim, and I'd be left holding nothing but my own humiliation. No, not yet. Each night her laughter seemed to linger, a careless, echoing reminder of what I'd lost. I was a ghost behind my own eyes, a man rehearsing the lines of trust while plotting the final act of our story. And still inside, my heart screamed, how could she laugh? How could she think this was nothing when it had cost me everything? That question became my obsession, the engine that powered every minute, every movement, every secret plan. I would have my answer, and when I did, Claire would never pretend to laugh at my pain again. Sometimes solitude sharpens the pain until it's razor thin. After discovering Claire's ongoing affair, each moment alone in our house became a slow torture session. The ordinary world, morning coffee, the ticking of the hallway clock, dinner for two, became a theater of silent accusations. My mind replayed every detail, every laugh that once comforted now ringing hollow, almost mocking. I started paying attention to things I'd once ignored. The way Claire triple-checked her phone, how she turned the shower on before undressing so her cries, either of guilt or pleasure I no longer knew, would drown beneath running water. I became an expert in reading the subtlest cues. A twitch at the corner of her mouth, a shadow of hesitation before offering a kiss, the offbeat in her laugh when the subject of last weekend came up. There was an agony in knowing and not knowing, in loving and hating at the same time. I felt raw nerves everywhere. Every day I'd wake up thinking, today I'll say it, today I'll ask her why. But each time the words crawled up my throat, I saw only her soft vulnerability, the hint of the woman I once adored, and I froze. Fear and rage fought inside me. What if she laughed again? What if revealing what I knew only deepened my humiliation? One night, my chest too tight for sleep, I lay awake watching Claire's silhouette by the window. Her phone glowed a ghostly blue. I turned away silent, but couldn't help picturing whose words she was reading, whose touch she could still feel. The story on her screen wasn't meant for me, not anymore. The next day, I called in sick to work. While Claire left for her supposed yoga class, I followed. My palms sweated on the steering wheel, lungs coiling tight with dread and anticipation. She drove across town, not to the gym, but to a small cafe tucked between rows of glaring autumn maples. That's where I saw them, Claire and the man from the photos, their bodies leaning close, talking like conspirators. She laughed a pure sound, crystalline in its joy, and brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear as he reached across the table and stroked her hand. The intimacy was casual, practiced. My pulse pounded so hard my vision blurred. For a moment I debated confronting them then and there, but I held back. I needed proof. I needed my pain to matter, concrete as evidence in a trial, so I snapped photos, my hands shaking. Each click documented the distance between who we pretended to be and who we really were. I watched through the window as Claire's face shifted from radiant to worried, the mask slipping for half a second before she kissed the man goodbye and left him with a wicked smile. Driving home, the possibilities churned in my mind. Divorce, public humiliation, rage-fueled confessions to friends and family, but none of these ideas lit up the hollow place inside me. What I wanted, what I needed, was for Claire to understand, not just my hurt, but the totality of what she'd destroyed. I wanted her to look at me and feel the same gut punch, the same torn-apart confusion. That night I spoke softly as we prepared for bed. "You seemed happy today," I said, watching her face closely. She blinked and turned away. "Just a good day, that's all." The lie dropped between us like a stone. I turned off the light, listening to her breathing as it calmed, but in the dark I planned she would face what I had faced. She would regret ever laughing at the pain she caused. The next day, under the pretense of running errands, I made preparations. I gathered evidence, the photos from the cafe, the messages, the receipts for hotel rooms. I called a lawyer. I confided in my closest friend Mark, choking on every word as he listened in furious silence. "You have your proof," he said gently. "The question is, what do you want to do with it?" What did I want? Revenge, closure, justice, or just for her to finally see the wreckage she'd made of my soul? Was it possible for her to understand for even a moment the true cost of her harmless night? I started planning the confrontation, not a screaming match, not violence, but something cold, deliberate. Something that would sear the memory into her the way she seared betrayal into me. She'd chosen the path, but I would make sure she remembered every step. As dawn broke, shining through our bedroom blinds, I couldn't help but wonder, would she cry? Would she break, or would she once more try to laugh it all away? I was done being the ghost. I was ready to haunt her, to make her regret every second she mocked my pain. It was a war fought in silence and shadows. Every morning, Claire wore a mask that cracked just enough to let me see desperation flicker in her eyes. She knew I had found out. The photos, the texts, the evidence I gathered, it was all a cold, invisible weight between us. I could see her pulling back, closing doors, retreating into herself. Yet every time I reached out, searching for the woman who loved me beneath the betrayal, she pushed me further away. Her smile was a fragile thing, trembling on the edge of despair or defiance. I couldn't tell which. I was broken, but I was determined. One night, after a day when her distance felt like a canyon, I sat her down. The air in our living room felt dense, suffocating with unspoken truths, and my voice barely rose above a whisper. "Claire, we need to talk, really talk, no lies, no laughter." She looked at me, eyes wide with shock or maybe fear. "What do you want to hear?" she snapped. I took a deep breath. "I want to know why. Why did you do it? Was it really harmless? Did any of it mean anything to you?" Her face hardened as if I'd stabbed her through the chest. "You think this is easy for me? You think I wanted to hurt you?" The honesty trembling beneath her anger was like a flame flickering in the dark. "Then why?" I asked again, bitter and aching. She didn't answer. The room drowned in a silence thicker than any words could be. Days passed. Each was a battlefield of glances and guarded conversations. I became obsessed with unraveling how a woman who once promised forever could so casually throw away everything we built. The harmless night she laughed about wasn't an accident. It was a choice, one she made again and again while pretending to live the life of a faithful wife. But there was more. The underlying loneliness, the quiet desperation I'd failed to see, the moments she felt unseen, unloved, those haunted her just as the pain haunted me. Our marriage wasn't just broken by betrayal. It was shattered by silence, neglect, and unspoken fears. Then late one rainy evening, Claire broke down. She crumpled to the floor, tears carving silent rivers down her cheeks. She whispered confessions of regret and panic, her voice shaking like a fragile thread holding us together. I knelt beside her, torn between anger and compassion. "I don't want to hate you, Claire. I want to understand. Her sobs choked her words, but the truth spilled out in fractured pieces. Feelings of emptiness she tried to fill, the thrill of being desired, the guilt that twisted her soul. It wasn't justification, it was the raw, painful humanity of two people lost inside their own versions of love. The obstacle was no longer just her betrayal, but a shattered past and uncertain future. I wanted to forgive, but the wounds were too deep. I wanted revenge, but revenge would destroy what was left of my soul. Instead, I found myself at a crossroads between destruction and redemption. What now? She asked, her voice fragile as a whisper in the storm. I had no answer then, but I knew one thing: the woman who laughed at my pain would never escape the truth of what she had done. I wouldn't let her. The plan I'd made shifted. It was no longer just about making her regret. It was about something more dangerous, making her face herself, and the reckoning was coming soon. The day of reckoning arrived with the weight of 1,000 silent storms. Claire moved like a fragile ghost around the house, knowing the walls themselves bore witness to the unraveling of everything she had taken for granted. I was calm now, but beneath the surface, a fire burned steady, unwavering. I had prepared everything, the evidence laid out meticulously on the kitchen table, every email, message, photo, and receipt a testament to her betrayal. I wasn't angry anymore, I was resolute. This wasn't just about exposing her lies or making her feel pain as she had made me feel. This was about taking control of the narrative of my own life. Claire found me there when she returned from work, the afternoon sun falling through the windows in long beams that cut across the room like harsh truths. Her face paled when she saw the array of proof I had gathered. Why? She whispered, shocked and vulnerable. I met her gaze steady and unflinching. Because laughter isn't harmless when it's at someone's pain, it's a wound you don't get to pretend never existed. Not anymore. For the first time, Claire dropped her defenses entirely. Tears fell freely, raw and honest. I'm sorry, she said, voice breaking. I didn't know how to stop. I was scared, lonely, but that's no excuse. The air between us shimmered with decades of loss and broken dreams, futures unwound like frayed threads. It wasn't just her night of betrayal that tore us apart. It was years of silence, misunderstandings, unmet needs. I wanted to scream, to shout, to rage, but instead I found a quiet strength I didn't know I had. I'm not here to punish you, I said, my voice soft but firm. I want you to understand that what you did changed everything. That laughter you thought was harmless, it's the sound of trust dying. Claire wept for a long moment, and then, like a fragile phoenix, something in her shifted. Not forgiveness, not absolution, but a raw, painful acceptance. She looked at me with a new honesty, the facade stripped away like autumn leaves revealing bare branches. I'm scared of losing you, she confessed, the vulnerability cutting deeper than any betrayal. But I don't know if I deserve to keep trying. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I stood and moved toward her, pulling her into a cautious embrace, two broken souls trying to find a path through the wreckage. The obstacle wasn't just her infidelity now. It was whether what remained between us was enough to rebuild or forever lost in the ruins of shattered trust. The journey ahead would be long, filled with tears, difficult conversations, and painful truths. But in that moment, the laughter that once mocked my pain was replaced by a fragile hope, one I would fight for, even if it meant facing the darkness together. Because sometimes the deepest wounds hold the possibility for the greatest healing. The silence in the house was deafening the morning I decided to end the charade. The years of silence, betrayal, and shattered trust were no longer ghosts in the shadows. They were tangible, breathing realities we both had to face. Claire sat across from me, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights, regret etched deep into every line of her face. I want to understand, truly understand, I said quietly. But I need to know if there's anything left of us worth saving. Her hands trembled as she reached for mine. I don't expect forgiveness. I only want you to see I'm not the same person who laughed that night. I was broken, lost, and afraid. The raw honesty cracked through the ice that had formed between us, exposing a fragile core of hope. We talked for hours about pain and love, loss and betrayal. The obstacles remained, colossal and looming, but for the first time we both saw the possibility of healing, not as lovers, but as two flawed people trying to rebuild from the ashes. It wouldn't be easy. Trust would have to be earned day by day, moment by moment. But laughing at pain would never be an option again. The laughter that once mocked my heartbreak had been replaced by a quiet, trembling hope, a hope born from truth and the courage to face it together. Claire had made her regrets, and I was ready to make mine. Because sometimes the hardest battles lead to the deepest understanding, and in that understanding lay the fragile seeds of forgiveness. The fragile seeds of forgiveness.